This had never been a problem for Dan, who slept on the leaves and satisfied his hunger by hunting. Having lived like this since childhood, the demon had no idea what to do now that he had to earn money. Looking at her, he wondered why he had only remembered this now. So, Dan called her to leave. He needed to think of a way to earn money quickly and efficiently. On the way home, the child asked them to stop for a moment. Apparently, she had found something interesting in the middle of the mud, for she kept digging. After a while, she told God that the work was almost finished, and when he asked what the little girl was doing, an answer was no longer necessary. A beautiful pink flower was rising above the ground, and Somi wanted to take it home. Dan then asked her if she was capable of doing such a thing. Since the plant seemed to be firmly attached to the ground, the little girl raised her arms to show her muscles and said she was strong enough for that. After that, she carefully grabbed the flower and began to pull. But the demon had noticed that there was something unusual about that situation. There were several footprints that did not belong to the two, although they were the only ones using that passage. And the weeds around it had all been removed. That branch had been deliberately planted by someone, and a valuable secret was attached to its base, hidden in a brown bag. Just as she was about to open the bag, a stranger revealed his presence. He screamed, asking how she dared to touch what did not belong to her. Then he jumped at the little girl, with a dagger in his hands. His movements were so fast that Sumi barely reacted. When the weapon was just a few centimeters from the young woman's throat, the demon grabbed the attacker's arm, who was instantly forced to let go of the knife. He was a young boy with beautiful, albeit withdrawn, facial features. His breathing became increasingly heavy as he tried to assess the strength of his opponent. But the protagonist's grip caused a piercing pain. It was impossible to maintain a proper posture with all that pressure, especially with those eyes that seemed to have seen everything, except a real threat to their owner. Dan then pulled him by the wrist and threw him, bringing even more disbelief to the poor boy. He flew a little and then returned to the ground. If he hadn't been skilled, he would have broken his spine with a similar impact. The bandit foamed a little at the mouth before completely losing consciousness, allowing himself to be defeated in seconds with a single hand. A few steps away, Sumi was standing without being able to say a word, and then she fainted, dropping the flower and the bag, but was supported by the hand of her uncle, who carefully held her. The little girl had ended up losing consciousness due to the shock. This made the demon even more furious. If the other guy had really hurt her, he would already be dead. But apparently the boy was just trying to scare her, which calmed God down a little. So, he picked up the bag to check what was hiding so valuable. It was reasonably small and fit perfectly in the palm of the protagonist's hand. After carefully opening the package, his expression changed. And the mischievous smile that appeared revealed the usefulness of what he had discovered. Thus, Dan went to the fallen man and placed him on his shoulder. And also carrying his little companion, he returned to the mansion. That night, the night sky revealed few stars, but everything seemed peaceful. In one of the rooms of the house, the young man from earlier was moaning. When the pain became stronger, he woke up, causing his mind to be consumed by fear and confusion. He then looked to the side and noticed an imposing figure. Under the moonlight, the scarred warrior was watching him attentively. Before the young man could say anything, the demon introduced itself. His eyes were cold and yellowish, which made them emanate an aura of death. The injured boy felt that gaze crush his body, but remained silent. It was like a snake that, after having wrapped itself around its prey, left no possible means of escape. Dan said that he had decided to keep him alive, but asked the prisoner if he had any idea why. To which the thief, with tears in his eyes, replied that he did not know. With that, the god asked how much the bandit's life was worth. And he said it was worth 1,000,000 yongs, which surprised his captor. But the man did not give in, saying that was what he liked to think. However, Dan valued it at only 1 silver yang, although he also agreed that we choose our value. In this way, the prisoner's life would start to cost 1 million, as well as the pardon for his last crime. With this addition, 5 million nyans would have to be paid so that he could once again achieve freedom. In the city, dishes and desserts of all kinds were brought to the magistrate's office. Since his supposed performance in the fight against the sect, he had gained a large number of admirers, but he always found some excuse to leave the presence of the ladies and lock himself in his room. The first thing he did when he isolated himself was to scream in anguish. Glory carries a much greater weight than people usually expect. Everyone began to see him in a different light and to expect more achievements. But all that excess in his valorization as a hero was bothersome. Besides, the royal family itself had entrusted him with an important mission, as the golden Buddha had been stolen by an extremely skilled thief. And, since it was a confidential matter, they decided to entrust it to the minister, who had been able to arrest the leader of the bandits. Even after the defeat of all his subordinates, with the greatest possible pressure, they made him accept the chief task. In this way, the judge grumbled bitterly, saying that the thief should have been more cautious, so that they would not notice the theft. Meanwhile, the talented criminal was sweeping the floor of the mansion, with his face covered in low bruises. He wondered why he always had to go through so much suffering and hardship, because the amount demanded by the demon was far beyond what was feasible and the bill made no sense at all. But Dan's look made it very clear that those words were no joke. Then the prisoner explained that he did not have any money at the moment, but he would pay everything later. Then he placed his hands on the floor and begged for mercy. He even went so far as to press his forehead against the ground in front of the military god, saying that he would do whatever he ordered, no matter if it was cleaning or washing. He would do it without complaining. Under those eyes, even a king would humble himself. The protagonist's aura revealed an undeniable murderous essence. And the thief. When the prisoner revealed himself to be a good cook, the warrior realized his usefulness, as he was unable to prepare good meals. With that, Dan determined that, until he received the amount of 5 million, he would remain with the bandits' belongings. And he warned that, if he tried to escape, the debt would be doubled. Thus, he became the mansion's handyman, and was usually watched by the little girl who watched him from behind the pillars, showing great interest in the new resident. But the janitor had not given up yet. He was determined to recover the golden Buddha and exchange it on the black market on the appointed day. After all, he had put his life at great risk to steal it. On the other hand, life in the mansion had become more comfortable for the other residents, who could now enjoy incredible meals. This was a talent the young man could be proud of. And the protagonist. He even went so far as to point out the efficiency of his skills and how it suited him better. But the bandit changed the course of the conversation, asking if they were enjoying the food. To which the demon replied that it was satisfactory. And so the boy began to receive 3 silver coins per month. However, he did not plan to stay there for much longer, because he had already discovered the location of the bag. It was hidden on the ceiling of the dining room. So, noticing the cook's anxious behavior, Dan decided to tell Sumin a story. In it, no matter how many times some Wukong reincarnated, he would still remain in the hands of Buddha. And when asking the servant if he knew such a tale, he answered yes, although he felt very sorry for Wukong. Some time later, while wringing out a wet dishcloth, the thief rethought his life. Was he the kind of person who should be doing those housework? The current handyman of the mansion had been the first thief capable of stealing from the palace. He could not be compared to any other half-baked thief. If he decided to run away, who would be able to catch him? So, with great indignation, he threw the dishcloth against the wall. He could not understand why he was working so hard in that isolated mansion. He had to comply with the black market agreement, or else he would die. Although no one was capable of doing harm. As long as he remained with that crazy warrior, his calling was to steal and live well with other people's money, not to work as a lackey. But a familiar voice brought him back to reality. His master was calling him to give him new orders about the care of the house, since he and the young lady would be away for a long time, fishing in the lake. That was a golden opportunity. The bandit had to take advantage of it to escape with the Buddha at any cost. But before leaving, Dan remembered that running away would only double the amount of the debt. Such words went in one ear and out the other. Because the bandit had already made up his mind. However, contrary to what the young man believed, that would not be his last day in the house. Arriving at the lake, she just asked me why they had gone fishing, considering that there was still plenty of food at home. The uncle replied that there was no exact reason, while drawing a circle with a twig. He then told her to keep fishing, as he had a matter to resolve and would not be long. The only rule that the little girl had to follow was not to leave that circle, as it made her invisible to the beasts and humans that appeared. Finally, she smiled, saying that she would catch a lot of fish, and the protagonist left the place with a serene expression. Quickly, he reached the magistrate's office, who continued to complain non-stop, and, clearing his throat slightly, revealed his presence. Upon seeing the demon, the minister was shocked, but he had just arrived with the solution to his problems. Meanwhile, the golden Buddha thief ran free, getting further and further away from the mansion.